Is Bob on?
Yes, Bob is on.
Yes.
Good evening
with
and
the ocean in
welcome
the
to
background.
good evening and welcome to the Permanent Public Building Committee of March 25th, 2024 meeting. This meeting is accessible by Zoom and is being recorded. Under the governor's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, issued March 12th of 2020 and in effect until the termination of the emergency, meetings of public bodies may be conducted virtually, provided that adequate access is provided to the public. On March 29th, 2023, the remote public meeting provision was extended through March 31st of 2025. As in this format, all votes will be conducted by roll call. With that, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to welcome our newest member, Bob Dermody. Bob, welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Hearing already great things from George. You and George have had a chance to touch base on the finer points of PBC service. I'm happy to hear, and more to follow, I guess.
Thank you, Rich.
Bob, you're well known to many members of this committee through your extensive municipal and community service. I should note that Bob and I serve on the Needham Exchange Club together, so it's great to welcome him from that context as well. Bob, not to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind giving us a very, very accelerated elevator speech, that would be terrific to introduce yourself.
Okay, I'd be happy to. I'll start with my sports affiliations. I'm a UMass fan.
Excellent.
So go Minutemen.
Well, that's all right. I won't hold that against you.
All right. Very good. So welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. So born and raised in Needham. I haven't technically lived here my whole life. I've had a bed here my whole life. And I studied civil engineering at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And then I studied architecture at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I've worked for both civil engineers, structural engineers, and architects. And for the past 20 years, I've been teaching architectural structures at Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island.
Excellent. Great. And Bob, you come to us from the Design Review Board, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, they reluctantly let me go.
Well, they're
But
lost.
I had a good run there with Mark Glusing, 12 years on that board. And one other little story I love to tell people. So I attended the Pollard School, which I understand we'll be talking about. And I took an art class at Pollard in the 8th grade, maybe, with a man named Mr. Carchidi. And the name of that art class was architecture. And here I am today.
Excellent. Great. Well, we again welcome you very much, Bob, and thank you very much for
Thank you all.
place to serve. Appreciate it. Our first item for business tonight is the approval of the minutes of the March 11th, 2024 meeting. This will be a roll call vote. Bob, I'm assuming that you're probably going to abstain, I would guess. Okay, so I'll call your name just officially so you can enter that into the record. But
Good practice.
excellent. Great. Okay. Well, the minutes having been distributed and the chair not having been made aware of any requested changes, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 11, 2024 meeting as presented?
So
Motion made.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. And we will then proceed to a roll call vote unless if there are no other questions or comments regarding the minutes. Stuart?
Aye.
Thank you. Lynn?
Aye.
Thank you. Bob?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. George?
Aye.
Roy's not here tonight. Erwin?
Aye.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. And we move on to the next agenda item. Next agenda item is the RTU replacement at Elliott and Broadmeadow for a status update and HVAC general contractor pre-qualification. So with that, I'll turn the mic over to Hank and Ken.
All right, let me share my screen here. We'll start with the HVAC/GC pre-qualification. Find it here. Which one is it? It's that one. There we go. But you're probably not seeing it, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We still have the Hollywood squares on.
Yeah. I've the cloud screws me up. There we go. I got to call it off of the cloud before I can do it. Anyways, we met last
Hi.
week. We had multiple folks send in pre-qualifications. There was only one different one, PJ Kennedy, from last year when we did Elliott. So 5 of the actually 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 5 of the ones from last year maintained their approved status, as did PJ Kennedy being the new one. NB Kenny again did not pass muster, and as you can see on the screen here, 2 reasons. One is they were under the minimum total, but the big portion of that was because the reference was just horrible. So they were disqualified and will be notified once approval of the committee of this the disapproval of the committee of these contractors. So you can see the scores there on the screen. The ones that did qualified handily, and the one NB Kenny did not. So if there are
Was
any
there a
questions,
major-
I'll be happy
Was
to
there a
answer them.
was there a major reason why they were so terrible?
The references that Hill International, or I should say Lyro Hill, as they go by now, reached out to on previous projects, they got lousy references. And I was one of them because I had a terrible experience with them at public safety.
Oh,
So
I see.
I think 4 of the 5 would not work with them again, and 1 was adequate.
I see. Okay.
Any
So
other
Ken, your recommendation then would be to go with,
to
with the remaining-
approve the 6 that the committee, the pre-qualification committee approved, and the 1 disqualification for NB Kenny.
okay. All right. For purposes of discussion, the chair will move that the PBC accept the recommendations to approve as qualified CAM HVAC Ananti and Sons Enterprise Equipment, General Mechanical, JF White, and PJ Kennedy, and to disqualify NB Kenny. Is there a second on the motion?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Any questions for Ken?
Which of these have we worked with before?
Cam is actually the contractor on was both on the Hillside when we redid Hillside for the schools, and they're
Right.
also the contractor at Emery Grover. Enterprise is the current contract for Elliott, and I have worked with JF White in the past. Hank, I don't know if any of the others have done town projects or not.
Yeah, General Mechanical has done work in town. I forget exactly which projects.
Yeah, I remember their name. Yeah, I thought there were a lot of them on here. So that's a pretty good array of contractors. And we've worked with or have good references for a lot of them. So
Yeah.
that's good.
And we also with Enterprise right now, as you may recall, they came in with a very, very competitive bid
Right.
on the Elliott School. And we
Yeah.
hope they'll
Be as
sharpen
competitive.
their pencil as much for the Broadmeadow.
And in a moment, we'll be talking about the reconciliation on the 75% CD drawings, just to give you an idea of where we are with that.
Perfect.
And David, you joined as me. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right.
And I didn't know if you had any other comments, but Ken went through the recommendations.
Okay, no, thank you, Ken. No, this is a pretty good group. This is very similar to what we had last time. I've worked with almost all of them, and I think in this market, you'll hopefully get a good turnout on when you put it out to bid.
Good.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we can bring this to a vote. I said, Michael, will you be casting a vote for Ann on behalf of Ann, because Ann is not on the call today?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, terrific. Okay. The motion having been made and seconded, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Stuart? Oh, we lose Stuart? Yes, we did. Okay, well, hold.
Sorry, it's me. Aye.
No worries. Okay, thank you. Lynn?
I,
You. Bob?
If it's all right, I think I'll abstain again.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Erwin?
Aye.
Okay, and Michael?
Aye.
Gary is not on tonight, I see. Okay, so the chair will vote aye. Very good, thank you. Okay. Any other discussion items before we leave the RTU replacement project at Broadmeadow?
I do have, let me pull up the reconciliation. All right, so we had the reconciliation meeting was done about a week and a half ago. The estimators, PMNC and AMF went through the 75% construction docs, and this is not a final budget yet, so we're not voting on this as we don't have the 100%, and we still need to go out to bid, and I'll discuss the timeline in a second. But this came in, the two estimators were within 202,000 of each other, which is less than 5% difference. One at 5277, one at 5,479,000. So an average of around, 5,430 approximately. And that includes the alternate one, the air source heat pump. So those are kind of just where the numbers are, and just to give you an idea where we're going.
Ken, for the benefit of our newest member, Bob, can you just give a 2-minute overview of why we do this and what this is in a nutshell?
Sure. Generally with the contracts, in this case, Lyro Hill, who's our OPM for the project, and the architect / engineer, in this case GGD, each will bring in a estimator, and they'll each do their own estimates separately based on the documents, whether it be design development, CDs, various stages. In this case, we're doing 2, and they will then evaluate their numbers. We'll have a meeting, sit down, go through it. They'll talk back and forth and try to get their numbers within 5, 6, 7%. And that gives us an idea of what we're up against, what our budget looks like versus the numbers that are in this reconciliation, to see, are we really way off with the budget we have? Are we close? Is there something we need to tweak? Is there one major, as you look at this, the biggest difference of the 202 is the HVAC number, and that's 103,000, but that's still less than 3%. So it's not a huge difference. And we can massage these numbers, and again, it gives us an idea of where we're going and make sure that we're in close to our budget. So, Bobby, do you have any questions on the process? I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm fine for now. Thanks for that explanation.
Okay. So
I might also point out that the market has been all over the place. And what we find when we get the actual bids in is that we'll probably get at least this much range in the bids that actually are provided. And the last time on the Elliott project, the low bidder was slightly under the PMNC estimate. So they were very competitive. And by doing so, we were able to award their contract with the alternate number one, which is the air source heat pump. And Bob, next week I can explain to you what all that is.
Okay.
I may have to log out and come back in because for some reason my screen is not popping back up.
Okay.
So if you bear with me for a sec.
Hank, any other comments while we're waiting for Ken to reestablish contact?
The bids, I guess what he's going to do is bring up the schedule. We're planning to go out to bid. The documents would be available on the 11th of April. And then the filed sub bids would be due 2 weeks after. And the GC bids, HVAC GC bids would be due the 9th of May, with the intent of coming back to the committee at their 20th of May meeting to ask for the award to the low bidder. And we'll, by that time, and there we may, depending on how the designer is completing their documents, they may need to delay a week, but we're still trying to target the May 20th meeting. And as you may recall, we do have the appropriation already. We're not waiting for Maytown meeting. And the intent would be to award a year prior to start of construction so that we have adequate time to all the lead time necessary to review the submittals and to and purchase, for the contractor to purchase all the equipment, which can be up to a year's lead time.
Any other comments, questions from the committee? Okay, terrific. Is there anything else you need from us tonight with respect to the RTU project? Bravo and Elliott.
No, we're good.
Good. All right. No further questions, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. And that is the Pollard Middle School project, review of FAQ and the ATM article. So again, I'll pass the microphone to Hank and Ken to proceed on this topic.
Yeah, I'll let's see, minimize that. I distributed both the FAQ and the warrant article. Some of you are town meeting members, and probably, I guess the warrant articles are draft warrant articles, so the actual warrant hasn't been distributed as of yet. As you may recall, I can share my screen if you want to review that warrant article.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we have discussed before, the process we go through, Bob, is multiple steps with the MSBA. And the first stage is to be invited into eligibility. That period will start on May 1st of this year. And during that period, the town has to make submission of multiple elements, about 5 different things that are required by the MSBA. An important step is to fund the feasibility and schematic design. And we are working with the school department and others to draft the response to other submission elements, such as the building maintenance and capital planning. We have to submit a multiple page questionnaire about how we manage building maintenance within the town and how capital planning and funding for maintenance occurs. MSBA is interested in making sure that districts maintain the buildings that they help fund. And then also they're very interested in the educational program as to what will go into the school and how that relates to the DESE program and their base program. And the school department, working with the principal, have started doing drafts of that. And our anticipation is that we'll be able to actually make those submittals very soon after the website opens on May 1st, with the intent of expediting that process where the town is allowed up to 270 days. We are hoping to complete it within the first 90 days or less. And there will be some back and forth with the MSBA. They have various reviews. And before we can move into the next stage of the process, they have to accept that eligibility and invite us into that next stage.
One of the things that I think is important about being ready to submit all these things right away is that based on our track record and based on their knowledge of how we operate, they know we're probably going to push the envelope in terms of schedule. And having those all in early will be, I think, very important for us to be able to do that. And it's no guarantee, but it will give us an opportunity to show them how serious we are in really moving the schedule forward. And I think that's really important, both in keeping the costs down and getting this thing built as soon as possible.
And so, Bob, I'll take you through some of those other steps and brief you a bit on the school master plan that was first completed in 2020, and then with various updates. But we learned after 2020 that the cost escalation due to COVID and other factors was just skyrocketing costs. Initially at about 15%, it's been slowing down. Now we're in the 6% range. But when you're escalating at 6% a year, it means millions of dollars at the end as you go through the project. So it's expediting upfront is an important step, and hopefully they'll allow us to do so and move forward quickly. We're one of 19 districts that have been invited. We're in the second tranche of invitees, and we may be able to move rapidly enough to get kind of in the front of the pack, if possible.
Okay.
If there were any specific comments or questions about the FAQ, we could discuss those, or you could email those to me. I worked on those with the school department, and they were presented to the FinCom along with the budget that I sent out. And I think you all saw that at 2.75 million. See if I can bring that up.
I think that's right.
I recall seeing in there.
Yeah, here we go. Get rid of that. I can share my screen. There we go. And we went back and forth with Doran Whittier, and also looked at the references that we had through the MSBA. And Doran Whittier had pointed out to us that the fleet maintenance, wrong one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say it didn't look right.
You're ahead of yourself. You're going on the DPW. along with West-
Wrong one, sorry. Pollard, get rid of that one.
Erwin, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you. Hank, any initial reaction from FinCom?
We had gone into it with an estimate of 3.9 million for the design services. And so they were pretty happy about the reduction. And it did involve quite a bit of back and forth with the architect. Not that Doran Whittier will be the designer, but in a brief discussion with MSBA, they said, oh, it does look reasonable. It's in the range. And Doran Whittier really emphasized the importance of carrying the costs with some of the other the expenses, such as geotechnical exploration. We will likely be looking at geothermal for the building. And so we need to understand what the geotechnical survey will tell us. Likewise with the potential placement of a new building lower on the hill, we really need to understand what the rock formations are down there and where it transitions from rock to sand, because some of the side areas are all sand and gravel.
Yeah, that's it's a funny site because it has a large amount of rock, but it also has a large amount of potentially good soil for geotech.
Yeah, and it
or
also
geothermal.
I guess was one of the areas that was mined to backfill the back bay many years ago.
That's true.
So
Hey, this would not be our first foray into geothermal. We did PSAB, I believe, was geothermal. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's only a 20,000 square foot building, and it has a dozen geothermal wells. So I think that gives you a sense of
We've got a lot of land over there to be able to utilize that.
Yeah.
We'd have to run a lot more wells, but I think it still will be big enough. But that geotechnical work is important to get us to understand that.
yes, and also additional hazmat testing, better understanding of what the cleanup requirements will be, and very importantly, structural assessment. Some of the structural frame is from the 1950s, early 60s, and just may not be adequate for contemporary construction, and certainly not for adding on top of it.
Hey, was there a screen shot or that you'd like to share with us?
Apologize. I thought I had it all set
No
up.
worries.
Let me search for it.
Well, while we're waiting, I think I thought that my comments about the FAQs, I thought they were very well done substantively. I think there are a few typos and tweaks that need to be done, but I can email those to you, Hank. And
Okay, that would be great.
okay.
There we go. Okay, so what we had allotted, get rid of this. We had allotted $825,000 for both feasibility and schematic design. And that was a little bit higher than what Doran Whittier had recommended, but we also wanted to be able to cover the requirements associated with the theater, both lighting and sound design. And as you know, we've done a preliminary study on that aspect, but we would likely start off at a lower number in negotiating with any architects. And then these were the additional services that were recommended, including the site survey, the geotech, the hazmat, wetland delineation. Traffic studies will be very important for the site. We had to go through that in our previous approval. And during this stage, we will need to go through the preliminary approvals with planning and also conservation, or at least have the initial discussions. The actual approvals will probably be coming during DD stage. They do want to do a more detailed survey of the existing building. As you may recall, we did a scan survey of the Emery Grover building, which provided a three-dimensional base building that the architect then worked from. So we'll be looking to do something similar in this instance. And then the acoustical analysis is very important because of the proximity of the railroad and the noise associated with the railroad, and the proximity of the building and whether it could be moved, how much closer to the railroad it would go, and what the requirements would be for the envelope to stop that from becoming a distractive noise. So all of those extra services are close to $500,000, but I think very important. And we have also allocated then funding for OPM services, additional cost estimating, and the various advertising and so on and so forth. And we'll need to dip into those because we're also looking at bringing on a construction manager at risk during schematic design phase to look very closely at the site logistics and the potential for prefabrication offsite and other construction opportunities that might be appropriate for this constrained site. So that's what brought us to the $2.75 million.
I don't know how relevant this is now, but I wanted to remind everyone of the fair amount of noise that we, not decibel noise, but noise that we got from the neighbors on the other side of that hill when we did construction a number of years ago. So I do expect there to be some substantial objection to all of this when we start doing construction, or long before we start doing construction of any new buildings back there, both in terms of the in and outflow of construction vehicles, et cetera. And so we're going to have to look carefully at how to use that entrance and exit off of Dedham Avenue to do as much as we can. And that, I think we'll have to go through planning to do that. So there's a lot of issues associated with how do you get stuff in and out of that site, both construction vehicles and buses and so forth.
Yes, and neighbors on both sides, I think.
Right.
will have a strong say in the process.
Right, because remember, this project is probably going to increase the number of students coming and going from that building by a substantial amount. Never had so many.
That's right. And the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades haven't been there for the past 20 years or so.
Right.
Although it originally housed all 3 grades and then grew to accommodate those 3 grades with the addition of the modular classrooms, but those are now 20 years old and in need of replacement.
Right.
The
So there's a
total
lot
numbers,
of issues to prepare for.
the total numbers, when you bring 6, 7, 8 back, are actually, they're going to be a little bit higher, but we were seeing a lot of growth then. So, and before, that's one of the reasons, obviously, we had to get them out, the 6th grade out of Pollard in the first place. But when you said George Hill, which neighbors? I mean, I know we've got the neighbors on the one side, kind of the Colton Park neighbors, obviously over the railroad.
On the other side,
You're talking about
most of the issues were with neighbors on
Yeah.
the side near the tennis courts.
Yeah, they were.
Bradford Street and so on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the neighbors that use the center line of the property line to access their driveway up to behind the site. But when we did the Newman at Pollard project, we added parking in the back, and there was very vocal discussion.
Yeah.
And I've been alerted that the other side, which would be, I guess, the eastern side, will be equally as vocal.
Right, because you're affecting both sides now. So
Yes.
we have just begun to get the neighbors activated, I think, and you're going to hear it all along.
Yeah. We expect to do have a lot of conversations as part of this
Right.
project.
I think especially school committee needs to be prepared for that.
That's part of the reason starting up the FAC early and making very clear to folks that we're in a very early stage, so the neighbors will be an important part. Just like we did with the other major school construction projects.
Yeah.
Like Sunita Williams, in fact.
Yeah.
There'll be some complaints, but I think we should be able to, if we plan properly, we can work our way through them.
And I think, Hank, the in the FAQs, the community participation aspect of your comments, they really came through, really shown through in the in your remarks in the FAQs. So
Good.
that's very helpful.
Yes, and I know that the school department has been looking very closely at those things.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask you, Hank, the FAQs, what is the next step after we'll provide any comments, and committee members will respond individually to your email with any comments that they might have regarding the FAQs, and when do you expect it to be finalized, that document?
I think we need them relatively soon because they have to be sent or uploaded for town meeting members.
Mm-hmm.
And you might know better than I when that deadline is. They usually come out at about the same time as the final warrant articles.
Yeah.
So that would be sometime
Middle of April.
middle of
Yeah,
April.
a couple of weeks at most.
So if you could get any comments back to me this week, that would be great.
Terrific. Okay. All right, that's a homework assignment for everyone. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments on Pollard before we move on to our next agenda item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Next item is the DPW, again, a review of FAQ and also the ATM article. And with that, Hank and Ken.
Yep. Again, I sent out the FAQ and the warrant article. I I think everyone is somewhat familiar with the scope of that work, but Bob, for your benefit, and David, you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to stay.
Thank you.
That the scope of phase one is to put an addition onto the Jack Cogswell building. And having you all having gone through the master plan process, Bob, I'll bring you up to speed next week on that as well. The intent is to bring the fleet maintenance group out to that site, an addition of a little over 10,000 square feet to the Jack Cogswell building. What is now an L-shaped building would become a U with a middle courtyard. And there would be 5 bays that would be used for the maintenance. Part of the rationale for moving the team out there was enumerated in the FAQs. That group only has about 5 or 6 employees. They tend to go there at the beginning of the day and work on maintaining the vehicles and then leave at the end of the day. So unlike the DPW at 470, there aren't trucks constantly coming and going. One of the biggest concerns that planning had was the increase in traffic on Central Avenue by moving more DPW facilities out there. The current planning approval only allows for the storage of vehicles out there. So we will have to go through planning to get that amended. There may be a traffic study that has to get done on this as well, but the impact would be very low. The other factor is that the RTS vehicles are the ones that require the highest amount of maintenance on a weekly or monthly or yearly basis. And so proximity to those is very important. And then finally, when things really go bad, it's during heavy snowstorms. And since all those vehicles have to go by the salt shed in order to get salt and filled up with the salt and sand mix, having the proximity of the maintenance right there to do quick repairs during those events would be helpful. Shane, have I missed anything else on that? And like the Jack Cogswell building, rock blasting will be required. We will need to go through that same process of inventorying the abutting properties. And there will be additional clearing of trees on that site in order to fit it in. But the building will actually be somewhat disguised by the rock outcropping that's for a little bit further to the north, north and east. And so it will back up against that. And there won't be any openings facing the residential, which is on that other side. So from a noise perspective, we don't anticipate a lot of daily noise. Let's see. When they design the site, they'll also have to make it solar ready. It will have to conform to the new specialized energy code. And so we will likely be looking at not using natural gas for heating, but instead air source heat pumps. And I think as we go through the process, we may look at actually purchasing the solar, having the town purchase solar panels for the rooftop in this instance, because the building could potentially be closer to a net zero building. And with some of the incentives, both state and federal, that may be more advantageous. I'm not sure that we would go toward geothermal here, but air source heat pumps might be more than adequate, as we were looking at multiple other buildings.
So you mean to tell me, Hank, that our original plan of putting as much solar on this building might actually work and the town would be responsible? That's pretty good.
Well,
That was the
you know,
original plan.
it always comes back to budget, George.
Well, exactly. That was our original plan.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of shot down by FinCom because they said, oh, that's going to cost too much money. And I don't think they were very wise in that decision, but that's my opinion. And now it's possible we could come back and do essentially the same kind of project we did at Sunita Williams.
Well, the appropriation will be for design funding, and we'll go through those cost benefit analyses during the design process. And hopefully we'll be able to prove the point that it's worthwhile.
And
Hank, the only thing I'd add to that is this also includes running the sewer out to the site as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that will have to be a force main, because the closest sewer is up at Mark Tree, intersection of Mark Tree and Central.
are we never going to run that site to sewer up to Mark Tree? It's not a question for you, Hank, but Shane, maybe?
No,
That's what we would be doing, George, is we'd be
Oh,
running
it is.
the Mark
So you-
Tree, but we need a force main to pump it from the site to, because the site's at a lower elevation.
Oh, I see. That's right. Okay, got it.
And Bob, just to clarify, the reason it's the JCB is not sewered at this time is that it really was designed to be a kind of an unmanned facility, if you will, just for storage or one-person facility. So, but obviously the use would change with the new construction. And Hank, I wanted to ask you too also about the status of the discussions with the state regarding the presence of the array at the RTS and the request, obviously, to have on the same lot or the additional solar array on JCB. How that's progressing.
Yes, I believe that the 2-parcel rule, they are now finally, 2 years later, acknowledging that similar parcels to ours would be eligible to have 2 solar arrays on a single parcel. However, during the 2 years that we've been waiting for this decision, the net metering benefit that we had applied for expired. So we would need to restart that process. And I'm not sure what net metering, if any, would be available in the future. And the town's energy consultant continues to review this with town council. But I thought that we would take a fresh look with the design of the new building as we're going through each of the phases, schematic through schematic and DD in particular, and look at those costs and what those potential benefits would be. And these numbers relate to what is in the 2.3 is part of the town meeting warrant. And the proposal would include both design and OPM services and a series of similar expenses, anticipated expenses for things like independent cost estimator, commissioning agent, the geotech, the survey, the sewer, industrial equipment. There'll be quite a bit of industrial equipment incorporated into the building with mechanical lifts and other things. And then also some of the more detailed sustainable design elements that we'll be looking at, including full solar PV and potential for battery backup. And we did look at both solar and battery at the Emery Grover building, but technologies are improving, and the area of roof at the Jack Cogswell building and the addition should give us ample opportunity to have something beneficial there. And I think we have sufficient flexibility here because some of the construction admin costs could be pushed into the construction funding, but for right now, it's included within this number.
Stuart, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. The question I have, Hank, is the estimated services seem to be pretty high on some of these. Now, if I recollect, when we've done these things before, they haven't been but maybe 20% of the total. Is this just a way of going about it this time differently? Because estimated could actually be higher. So if you look at actually the OPM, 50% of it is an estimated cost. I thought the basic service would cover more of that. Now, granted, that might be the total price of $499, might be the total price for the designer of 1.6, but it makes me uncomfortable when I see the high estimated expenses on that side of the equation versus within the basic that they should be absorbing because they know their business.
Yeah, I did go through this once with them, and in my first round of review, but the geotech, we really haven't done. We do need to do additional geotech work up there. We do have a preliminary survey, but we will need to do additional survey work. We're actually going to have to do some probes along the alignment of the sewer to fully understand how much rock removal will be necessary to put that force main in. I personally recall the blasting we had to do both out there and for the salt shed. So there's quite a bit of exploratory work that is not part of standard, basic services.
So what we're saying is we've got a lot more unknowns right now.
We do.
On the site, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's a little bit more than I would have thought, but that's okay. Thanks.
Yeah. The way I would look at the estimated expenses is a
Not to exceed.
cap not to exceed.
Right.
Yeah.
And likewise with the OPM costs, those are some of our internal costs. So we have a bit more flexibility on those. But for the expenses, we definitely need to bring on a commissioning agent. We'll definitely need to have our independent cost estimator. So there are expenses that we'll need at each of those stages, as we have on all other projects. Because we will not have a CMR. This will be a design bid build process. And the more unknowns we can make to be knowns, the better. And hopefully that'll, and as you recall, with Jack Cogswell, we were able to return a fair amount of money or not use all the money that was allocated. And I think we would have a similar hope in this instance.
Yeah, but the environment's, sorry to interrupt, but the environment's changed. We didn't have the luxury. I don't think we have the luxury today that we did back then with the economy, with the tight, unless you think the bidding environment is going to be aggressive. I would envision that a lot of separation of costs and estimated costs are forcing that people really want to capture their value and have an opportunity to increase it versus, I know it's not to exceed to an extent, but still, it makes me a little weary, but.
I mean, I was shocked when Weston and Sampson said these buildings are coming in at $1,000 a square foot. I said, are you kidding me? But a lot of it is what's happening underground. And steel prices have been going up, and we'll have to insulate this better. We'll have to look at a different way of heating it, so on and so forth.
Well, we can, I think this is a reasonable attempt at the estimate. I think it is a little high. I agree with Stuart in that regard. That's something that we can look at a little more carefully. And I think Weston and Sampson typically estimates high. I know that from previous experience with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their basic services are in the 10 to 12% range, which I think is reasonable, and it. But as I say, for the OPM, we do have flexibility. In our department.
Right. Okay. But yeah, we're just gonna have to watch it carefully. I'll be interested in the environment.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'd like to, there are no further questions or comments. I'd like to wrap up this particular segment. I would note that, again, I thought the FAQs were very well prepared, very substantively fine. There's a few minor tweaks here and there, which I'll forward you my comments on those. And please, I would welcome the committee to do the same individually. Send your comments to Hank. And Shane, thank you very much for joining us. As always, you can stay if you'd like for the next topic. If not, that's fine too. Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, next topic is the library. Welcome, Dimitri. And again, we'll pass the microphone on to Hank and Ken.
Yeah, I'll just start with a brief recap for Bob's benefit. Again, I'll share the the full feasibility study with you. But we had an architect, Util, go through a feasibility design process with this committee and with the library trustees. During that process, we identified 4 priority areas for renovation. Building is now over 20 years old. A lot has changed both in the users that come to the library and the technology within the library and collections. The first priority, which will be phase 1 of this next stage, will be the teen and tween area, or the young adult area, which is on the upper floor in that southwestern corner. It's up here, and it's quite a small space right now, which, if you've ever been in there, does get overheated during the day, and
Western sun is like a sauna up there.
Yeah. And it hasn't helped that the chiller wasn't working this past year. During the master plan, the design was to expand that area, take down the glass wall that enclosed the small zone, and glaze in a larger area, which is almost 5 times as big, to and offer a variety of seating for the young adults. What they have found, and Dimitri can attest to this, is that they can, when the high school kids come down after school, it's a wonderful to see so many kids coming to the library, but they tend to disturb some of the other patrons. And some are looking to do group projects, others are looking to just work on their homework, and others for research and other things.
And socializing.
And socializing, yes.
Right.
In a warm, comfortable place. They can always tell their parents, "Oh, I was just at the library."
Yep.
So this area number 1 will be the first priority. That's the next phase. 2 will be this children's area on the lower level, which will be upgraded. 3 will be the entrance, the lower entrance off of the Rosemary Street parking lot. And the 4th will be renovations up at the Highland entrance and adjustments to some of those existing computers. And let's see, and that's just zooming in a bit, but you'll be able to see the full study. That's a very quick refresher. And accompanying this, there'll need to be mechanical, electrical upgrades associated with redoing that space, acoustical changes, material changes, and added FF&E. So that's what constitutes the first phase of the work.
Hank, did you get any pushback from FinCom on this?
No.
No?
Dimitri, any?
No, it didn't seem to me. It seemed that once we, they had a few questions, like you alluded to, Hank, there was the one question of like, aren't we wasting space? I said, not really, because the tables in between where the teens are now and where adults want to go work, they leave some of them blank. It's kind of like a DMZ zone. So I think once this all occurs, every piece of space will be utilized. So, but no, overall, no, they were really good about it.
Okay.
And relative to the budget, this shows what UTL had projected relative to the escalation at 6%, which brought us from the numbers that they had this past year. It was about $129,000 in terms of escalation of all these various components. And so what we're looking at now is the initial appropriation, which will be in the $454,000. We've been a bit miserly on the OPM costs on this. It's largely an interior improvement project. The architect will have to carry a full structural engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, sound consultant. So they will have a full team that they have to accommodate within this budget. And they also have demonstrated how I think they'll achieve our goals for MBE, WBE. That's been part of our conversation to date. From a schedule point of view, once we get the funding approved, I guess I still need to find out whether we wait for just 20 days or whether we need to wait for July 1st. But the anticipation is that they'd be able to jump right into schematic design with the hope of getting bidding done by this time next year, so that construction could start over the summer. We would need further appropriations in May of 2025 for the construction. But we would at each stage be going through similar cost estimates. Any questions about that budget?
No, I guess just general question, Hank and Dimitri. I assume we'll be thinking about any swing space that's needed over the during the project, any in terms of displaced stacks and equipment, tables, chairs, etc. Have we been thinking about that, Dimitri?
Yeah, it should be very minimal because this is interior, because we're able to accommodate that without having to take on any additional space anywhere else, or even the shifting we'll have to do. It shouldn't be terribly impactful.
You can just cordon off the construction zone, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if
Plus it's taking place during the summer and it's not as utilized because
Right.
school's out in the summer.
I doubt that we'll be able to finish the entire thing during the summer. If we had been able to get the construction funding sooner, then there was a possibility that it could be done, during the summertime entirely. But there'll be ordering and submittals to review and so on and so forth. So that really will be dependent upon how rapidly we can award the contract. And town meeting is not particularly inclined to do the expedited approval.
Why is that? For this amount of money, that's
No, for the construction money.
for the construction money.
Yeah, for the construction money. I think we
Talking
have
about
adequate time
Next
to go
year's
through.
funding.
Yeah, I think we have adequate time to go through the design. On the DPW project, we won't be going for construction funding until October special town meeting of 2025.
Right.
And so that gives us a full 18 months to get through the design process, do the award in November, December, which then gives more than enough time to go through the submittals and approvals, RFIs and so on and so forth, and long lead order on steel and those kinds of things, so that they could start then in the spring and summer. But that's a full building. It's not interior design. And George, if we have to, we could move some furniture and other things over to Hillside. Hillside will become empty, largely empty by that time. So it'd be an opportunity for storage if necessary.
Yep.
I think again, I would encourage the committee to offer any comments regarding the FAQs to Hank. I'll be sending a few comments over as well, and hopefully we'll do the same. Any other questions or comments regarding the library project? Okay, hearing none. Well, Bob, we got off easy today because we don't have any invoices. Usually we end each agenda item with a slew of invoices to cover, but we don't have to deal with that tonight.
I will look forward to that in the future.
Okay. And this is a project timeline that Hank has been maintaining, and Hank, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So, and you all got a hard copy of this. Just trying to put all of the projects in context from FY 2024 all the way through FY 2030. As you know, we're finishing off on police fire. We still have that sign. They've been awarded the contract. There'll be some reseeding this spring up at the Ridge Hill project, so that'll be closing out as well. We'll rescind any balance in October special town meeting. Emery Grover construction continues. I'd like to remind folks that this Thursday at 3 o'clock, you're invited to the walkthrough over at Emery Grover. If you're interested, please wear your heavy shoes. We will meet in the construction trailer, the first one as you enter in off of Oakland. The first construction trailer is the OPM or town trailer. We can meet there. I'm not sure the weather is going to be all that great, so you might want to bring your raincoat. If you have a construction hat, please bring it. We will, there really won't be any tradesmen on site. They will have left by 3 typically, but we still would like you to wear your hard hat if possible. And so we'll meet at the trailer and then we'll walk through. And it is a construction site, so just be careful. It's not ADA accessible yet. It will be, but there's some, there will likely be mud and there will likely be things you have to step over as we go through.
Hank, if one does not have a hard hat, do we have any on site that we can borrow?
Yes.
I've got a few spares,
Okay.
and I'll see if O'Connor has some also.
Okay.
A show of hands, how many think they'll be able to join us?
What time is it
Richard?
again, Hank?
3 o'clock?
On Thursday?
Thursday, yeah. If you can't get there until 4, I can run you through, but
Yeah, I'm better at like 7 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock, it's tough haul.
Well, Lynn, if you want to do something early, let me know, because I'm there early. So
Okay.
it's just
Well, why don't
we'll
you
just
tell me
be-
when you're going to be there?
We'll
and-
be dodging tradesmen though at that hour. So
That's okay. I'm used to that.
I figured you probably were.
okay, so if you think you're able to join us, just drop me an email. I know that there'll be some of the school committee folks coming as well. RTU replacement, I think we've gone through. Elliott School is in process. They'll be doing some more work over the April break. And then it'll be a summer slammer this coming summer, starting right after school ends in June, completing up before the end of the summer. I think August 16th is their target date. The bids for the Broadmeadow will be going out next month. And as we discussed previously, that construction will occur the summer of 2025. School master plan, we've already talked about, but we'll get the appropriation, May town meeting, try to squeeze within the first 90 days so that we can be accepted into the program. And the first step will be forming the team. We technically have to get appointed as OPM. The town has to get appointed as OPM, so we have to go through an application process. Once the OPM is confirmed, we would likely, we would also have an on-call OPM, as we did with Sunita Williams, and as we have had with Hill Lyro, to assist with cost estimating and other OPM services. Once that team is formed and the architect is on board, town has a say, but ultimately it's the MSBA. They stack the deck. They have like a dozen people, and we only have about 3 on the panel. But once the architect is on board, then we go through feasibility. There are 2 stages, the PDP and the PSR. PDP is the programming stage, confirming all the spaces within the building and the size of those. Then the PSR is looking at alternate schematic designs for the site, and we have a whole slew of options that we will need to look at, including total demolition and reconstruction on the site, phasing, different scenarios for additions, so on and so forth. And I think they will probably ask us, do we have an alternate site to look at? And unless there's some miracle, I don't anticipate one coming out like it did at the Owens Poultry Farm. Once all of that is done, and they accept the PSR and the town and MSBA come to agreement on a preferred schematic, then we start into detailed schematic, and it's closer to a design development level, quite frankly, and a detailed cost estimate. And that gives us the basis for the project funding agreement and the amount necessary for the override. And we're targeting November of 2026 for that override vote. And then from there, we'd go through DDs, CDs, and bidding, and we're anticipating 3 phases of construction now, but those details will all come out during the schematic design stage. Any questions on school master plan? Big picture on the DPW. We're working on the first phase, which is the fleet maintenance at the Jack Cogswell building. As I said, we have an 18-month time period before we'd be requesting funding for the construction, which would be in October of 2025. But at annual town meeting in 2025, the current schedule has us requesting design funds for phase 2, which would be the upper 470 reconstruct, the addition of a wash bay, addition to the existing 6-bay garage, and then a similar 18-month process to get construction funding for that phase. And the importance of getting through those 2 first phases is that it gets most of the people out of the existing 470 building. And Bob will give you a walkthrough sometime just to see how wonderful that building is.
Sounds good.
You heard that cough, did you?
You're talking about the Public Works at 470?
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to work in that building many years ago.
You did.
I did.
It hasn't gotten any better. In
All
fact,
right.
Except you need to wear multiple hard hats in the building.
That's not duly noted.
moving down, unless there are any questions about DPW. Moving down to the theater, sound, and light, part of the annual town meeting approval is it'll be an article in the special town meeting, adjunct to the annual town meeting, and they will be asking for funding both for the construction of the what's called the SAC 2, or the safety and compliance items in the 3 theaters. And we have those documents in hand now, trying to verify exactly when those funds will be available, but we're hoping to get some or all of that work done this summer. Also, part of that funding would be the design phase for phase 1, which would be the Newman upgrades for theater system upgrades. And again, I'll have to share the full report with you, but theater system upgrades will include lighting upgrades, transitioning the sound system from analog to digital, transitioning all the theater lighting to LED lighting, and associated upgrades for those. Also, we're looking at replacing some of the curtains that are ancient and torn and putting in inherently flame retardant fabric. So all of those upgrades would be part of the theater system upgrades. And timing on the Pollard upgrades would more than likely be timed with the Pollard Improvement Project. And so the high school theater upgrades might be advanced sooner, but that's all dependent upon future funding. Any questions about theaters?
Hey, just to recap on the Pollard Theater, those improvements would not be part of the MSBA process, is that correct?
Oh, they would.
The MSBA will fund in a new middle school. They would fund a cafetorium or a gymatorium.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have a separate auditorium as part of their program. So it would be a negotiation process during schematic design as to what they would discount. I think that if we are doing upgrades to the stage and the lighting associated with the stage, that would likely be included, as long as we're not trying to add another stage to the cafeteria or to a gym. So it'll be part of a negotiation process as to, and usually what they do is a percentage reduction per square foot. And we went through some of those negotiations on Sunita Williams with them, where we constructed some additional gym storage space, which was really only jigging and jogging a foundation wall as opposed to jogging and jigging that same wall. So it was a relatively easy process.
But this is an area we're likely to lose on.
Yes, you're correct. But I wouldn't say that we would lose 100%. I'd say we'd lose
80%.
60%.
Okay.
But if the town says, no, we want to build a whole new theater, well, then that'd be zero.
Right.
Any other questions on that? The library we've already discussed. Phase 1, phase 2 would then be, the design wouldn't even, appropriation wouldn't come until 2026, according to the current sequence that we're talking about. But in 2025, the feasibility study for the CAF space utilization would include design funding for the redesign of the kitchen to make it into a commercial kitchen, and the addition of a vestibule off the back side of the building where most people enter anyway. And then the phase 2 wouldn't get funded, design funding, until 2027. And then there are a series of other projects that are in the building maintenance long-term plan, some of which might end up being over $500,000. But the committee will have to go through the process of deciding whether the building maintenance department continues to monitor and manage those. And that would be the Elliott boiler replacement, Needham High School RTU replacement. The ones that are associated with the theater are the oldest. They're pushing 25 or 30 years. They're in bad shape. And then there's some transfer station re-roofing and siding projects that are also on that list. And the perennial project for Cricket Field building is out there somewhere. which,
One question on the CAF space study. I saw in the draft warrant that, or actually, it might have been in the FinCom's memo to town meeting members that it appears that the municipal parking budget is being increased to account for lease spaces at the T lot. Has that lease come to fruition, or is it still being negotiated? Is that in anticipation of a lease?
yeah, I think it's being negotiated. There's a separate project ongoing to put a permanent generator. And currently the location would take up 2 or 3 parking spaces that are on the town side of the property line.
Mm-hmm.
And so the intent would be to replace those, but then also lease an additional 7 spaces so that staff parking and visitor parking could be accommodated. What they have found is that the lot, during peak periods, the lot is full, and yet the MBTA lot is nearly empty, or at least half empty. So it's consistent with the direction. It would also potentially allow us to have an additional handicap parking space near that new vestibule in the back, and maybe even one in the front, 1 or 2 in the front.
Any questions for Hank on the project timeline?
I did have a question regarding the parking. Who's negotiating that, Kate?
Yes, it goes through the town manager.
I hate to say it, but I think we need to try to be a little more aggressive at getting as many spaces as we can, as soon as we can, because whenever there's any event of any significance, that the lots are full, the streets are full.
Mm-hmm.
If
we're
we're
getting-
going to negotiate for 7, why not negotiate for 15? Because that MBTA side of the lot is really underutilized.
Yeah, we're negotiating actually for 13, I think, George.
Are
All
we?
those that front onto Hillside,
Yeah.
from the corner to the entrance to the CAF parking lot. So
Okay.
everything that's closest to Hillside, we're trying to get all of those.
All right. I would strongly encourage that because it is a, you know the old expression, if you build it, they'll come. Well, we built it and they come, and
Yeah.
and some of them turn away because it's not enough parking spaces.
Yeah.
So anyway,
All right, well, the hour is late, so we'd like to, if no further questions on the timeline, I think we can at this point go on to PBBC other business, of which I have very little, but I will ask if the committee has any. I just want to remind everyone that April 24th, that's a Wednesday, we'll be meeting at Town Hall in the Highland Room. I did want to ask whether the Highland Room is hybrid accessible, because
Yes, it is.
it is. Great. Okay.
Yes.
So Stuart, I think you'll be okay then. I think you indicated that you'll be remote that night. So, okay, that's great. Excellent. Good. And is there are there any comments from the committee or professional staff regarding anything we've talked about, or any other items of interest to the committee? Yes, Hank.
Sorry, one other. I will forward the committee the climate action roadmap, which is now finalized, and remind you that the climate action plan committee is climate action planning committee is now being reconstituted to be the climate action committee, and the select board is requesting that there be a member from PBBC or appointee to sit on that committee. And they are look very favorably at the expertise within this group. and they're also asking for members from other committees, including planning board, I think school committee, select board, and at-large members. So if any of you are interested.
Is this, I know I served on one of the subcommittees for that leading up to this, but I'm wondering, is there a particular expertise they're looking for from our committee?
You're right, George, and that as you may recall from the report, there are several categories and priorities within the climate action plan. And so I think that they see expertise from this committee focusing on net zero buildings. And that has all the parameters between mechanical, MEP, architecture, solar, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Erwin, you have a question?
Yeah, Hank, you have any sense on the frequency with which they would meet? Or is it too early to even answer that?
They have been meeting monthly, and Catherine is the expert note taker. And
I think
Catherine,
the intention was to meet after it was finalized. The intention was that this committee meet about once a month to continue to. Now they're in the stage where we'll be looking at implementation of things.
Yeah,
and so I think they were talking about once a month.
Yes, and what's a great help is we now have Gabby Queenan as the sustainability manager, and she, although she sits in our area, she's been doing a great job in terms of researching and focusing quite a bit on grant funding, both for DPW and other opportunities. So I will forward that climate action plan to all of you. And I'd say if any of you are interested, it'd be great. Raise your hand and I can, or email me or Catherine, and we can forward that interest on.
Anything else from the committee? Okay, hearing none, we come then to the final item, which is, of course, the motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you both. Roll call vote. Stuart,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Bob.
I will vote for this one.
Thank you. George,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you all for a terrific evening and very informative. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Good night,
welcoming me,
everybody.
everybody. And
Take
I'll see
care.
you next week, Hank and George.
Yes.
Thanks.